Sup y'all, it's me, Rotoro. I'm going to make a video talking about patch 133 and Warcraft 3 and Reforged and just generally my take on things. I guess I haven't really actually uploaded that many videos to my YouTube channel reflecting on Reforged because although I tried to record them a few times, I always got away from whatever my original point was and ended up not really uploading videos where I reflected on Reforged. So mostly I've stuck to completely ridiculous troll videos that just make fun of everything because that's quite frankly funnier and easier than any kind of serious topic or reflection on the state of things with Warcraft 3. But I thought it was interesting because looking at the state of things and where we are now, I'm suddenly coming to see that I'm pretty sure things for Warcraft 3 are going to get worse, probably a lot worse, but I don't really know for Warcraft 3 modding. And the reason for this is kind of a couple of different things. If you look right now in the patch 133 PTR, Blizzard is trying to sort of advertise this as the release of Ladder, and some people, surprising number of people, when I just kind of glanced over like Reddits and forums and things responding to this, are hopeful that this patch is the return of Blizzard to improve and fix Reforged. And I would sort of just like to comment that as far as I know from the sort of leaks and things that I read, my current understanding is that almost all of the stuff in patch 133, probably including the ladder, are things that the previous team made for Warcraft 3 Reforged before they were laid off. So with that in mind, this new patch doesn't really indicate that anyone new is actually doing anything meaningful, and makes me think, actually, more than anything else, probably bugs that are introduced in this patch aren't going to be fixed because the people who introduced them aren't there anymore and nobody knows where they came from. With that in mind, if I actually try playing patch 133, both the world editor and the game, I've gotten a much higher than normal number of crashes. It's not one single issue. This is a number of issues. I think as the old team was on their way out, they wanted to fix everything. And what's inside this patch 133 are their experimental and unfinished changes trying to fix everything. And so it's aggressive in terms of the amount of things that it changes inside of the Warcraft 3 game compared to the Reforged patch that we currently have live. And if that 133 patch goes live as is, things are going to get a lot worse for Warcraft 3 because then the only functioning client that people can go and buy and play for Warcraft 3 is going to be this engine that's getting more and more rickety and not really totally working correctly, except maybe in melee games. Maybe it has ladder, but as far as the custom games and the people who like to make things, some of the stuff they're making might not work anymore, and there might be nothing they can do about it. I don't really know. It looks like a lot more of those problems are in the world editor than the game, and that's always somewhat good because you could, in theory, just hack things and make your own world editor or some other thing like that. I know there's an open source world editor called Hiveway. Somebody wrote totally their own. You can imagine if there's a bug in Blizzard's editor and then you just use a free editor, then you sort of don't have a problem as long as the game still works. But I'm not totally convinced that the game is without the same amount of issues. I just happen to have tried the world editor more on patch 133. At one point I was joking to someone about it and I opened the patch 133 game and played it for 20 minutes and it did crash. I don't know why it crashed, and I can't really prove that crash is caused by 133 and not just the state of all things Reforged, but it's quite possible that it was caused by patch 133. So with that in mind, Warcraft 3 in this PTR, if this goes live, is going to get worse. It will get worse, and it's going to be worse than it is now. And I don't really see a financial incentive for Blizzard to make it better. And so I'm not really sure what to even advocate for this one. It just seems like now I see the future laid out before me, and what's going to happen is it's going to get worse. So thinking of that and talking about the future, I just wanted to bring to mind something that there was something really interesting to me in 2020 and the end of 2019 that I never quite fully wrapped my head around. But essentially, I followed Warcraft 3 Reforged's development very, very closely, and so the release of Warcraft 3 Reforged was not a surprise to me. There was not really much in it that I totally thought was unexpected or shocking or even really particularly bad, other than the fact maybe that
I was slightly surprised that they kept the same web UI menu system that they had been using on the beta and just made that into the actual game. I suppose in hindsight it makes sense as the most logical thing to do. You wouldn't want to have two menu systems, but it was fun during the beta for me to imagine that the menu system would have perhaps been kept from the original game because, in my opinion, it often felt nicer to use. So, with that in mind, in those months leading up to the release of Warcraft III Reforged, the most fascinating thing to me that I don't quite know how to express it, and when I do express it, I think it has a tendency to sound like an absurd conspiracy theory. And maybe it is, but I was added to a series of Discord servers of people who would seem to make a Discord server and go in it and chat about something and then clean it out and leave and create a new one. And I think they did this 2 or 3 times during the months leading up to Reforged release. And what these guys seem to do in their Discord server was they were talking all about Warcraft III Reforged, and they were trying to plan what to do about it because they were concerned they didn't like it or something. And they added me to it because initially they believed that I would sort of be on their side, or maybe they wanted to manipulate how I thought to kind of join with them. But it was really odd to me because prior to the release of Reforged, like prior to when Reforged deleted its predecessor off of everyone's computers and I think became this thing that really bothered people, these guys already had prepared a series of talking points and were saying how they had reached out to content creators to feed those talking points to the content creators, people like Bellular on YouTube. And that the talking points included a bunch of things about how Reforged was all made of lies and didn't deliver on its promises, and these other sorts of statements that, while ephemerally and in a sense of feeling you can't exactly convince someone that the statements are false, I would argue that I did not expect Reforged to achieve some of the things it did achieve, like the ability to play old Warcraft 3 maps on it. They claimed that when it was announced, and just by looking at it and seeing their claims that it would be like cross-compatible with the original game, obviously it's, you sort of make of it what you will, right? I think a lot of people, maybe the common way of looking at it now is to believe that Reforged deleted the predecessor game because it deleted the thing that had that old menu. And in doing that, then they, a lot of people I think feel like they're just being lied to, that Reforged says, well, if you want to play Frozen Throne, just use the Reforged engine Frozen Throne button and see, now it's cross-compatible with the Reforged. And I understand why people are frustrated because I don't like that new menu thing either. I find that to be pretty annoying. But with that in mind, there's still, like, the actual underlying game engine is the same code, and so Reforged does a reasonably good job of kind of like Warcraft 3 shining through there from beneath this web menu. And so it's not exactly a lie. Like, it did kind of do what Blizzard said it would do. It's just that once I see it and see it doing that, I think about, I personally start to think it would have been smarter at this point when I look back on things if Reforged had been like Diablo Resurrected and it had 2 different clients and said, the diehard fans who want to play these old games from the year 2000 with pixely graphics and all this stuff, they will just leave it that they can. And then for these new remake kind of things, that'll be its own client. You don't have to worry about backwards compatibility. You just make whatever you want. And I think that helped a lot with Diablo Resurrected because they didn't spend inordinate amounts of time trying to make it play the Eastern Sun mod or something from somebody's Diablo mod from 2005. Like, it's almost crazy to even try to do that, and yet Warcraft 3 did try because it had a world editor, and so it's a little more natural to tell yourself that you wish that you would try and you wish it would be supported for all those old things. So that same lack of direction and oddity with that, I don't know if it's a lack of direction, maybe it's just a direction I don't agree with. Let's call it just a direction I don't agree with. That same idea of a direction that I don't agree with worries me again today because those same trolls in those series of Discord servers, at some point right before Reforged released, right around that time, they kicked me out of their server back then. And they kicked me out of their server, I think, for a very specific reason. They were talking about the user Cam on Discord, who I've interacted with many times. And in talking to Cam, I several times submitted like bugs to him and tried to help with Reforged and got them to improve on the Reforged client. But these same kind of guys who had a preset list of talking points about what they were going to have everyone say about Reforged once it came out, along with their talking points, they would also just kind of ramble to each other and, just say things to kind of build their way of thinking up. And one of the things that they were saying one day was about how the user Cam, listing him by name, and a couple of other people that worked at Blizzard should be put to death. And when I was reading that and seeing them saying that he should be put to death, I pushed back against that, and I realized that was kind of for me this breaking point when I realized, I'm actually talking to people who are crazy that I don't agree with, and so I started telling them, I was like, no, Cam shouldn't be put to death. You can say a lot of things, we can disagree on art style, we can disagree on programming design, but Cam shouldn't be put to death. That's not true. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to determine that that's not true. And after I was kind of talking to these guys about that in this Discord server, it pretty quickly, I think, led to where I was like kicked out or something. But it was really odd to me because then a month or so later, or a couple weeks later, I think, after Reforged released, it wasn't very long before people who don't still play Warcraft 3, like friends of mine that I had from, 15 years ago or something that I used to play Warcraft 3 with a lot back when I got into the game, those sorts of people were receiving through their media streams and their content streams as information, basically the exact talking points that came out of this Discord server that these guys had been seemingly planning in advance. And so it's weird to me when I think about it, because the same set of trolls at that time kind of explained one of their other plans, which was that after this extensive amount of trolling that would go on, they believed that by creating a social environment in which everyone thought that Reforged was a giant failure, it would be followed up with sort of a second reforging from Blizzard Entertainment. I think the way that they described this was that Blizzard would make a second set of new art for the entire game of Warcraft 3, but in the second set of art, the art would try to all be more true to the original than Reforged was. And as someone modding the game frequently and who deals with a lot of the technology, I have really low faith that if Blizzard actually did that, that it would end up kind of like better than Reforged. It's hard to describe why, because I know a lot of people feel like they don't like Reforged, and a lot of people have valid concerns and criticisms. But just in terms of the underlying technology of Warcraft 3, it's like it's too old and alien compared to how games are developed today. So in my opinion, if you pay an art studio to make a bunch of art for that, with the intention of the art being the old Warcraft 3 art, but slightly higher res or slightly better, I think that over the course of trying to make it higher resolution, you either would end up not changing it substantially enough to be appreciated, or you would end up making new things like Reforged did and opening yourself up to a ton of criticism from people. And so when I look at it, I start to wonder if the future that we're going to see is going to actually be the future that these guys had been planning in their Discord server back then in the end of 2019, start of 2020, when they basically said they wanted to like troll and make everyone hate Reforged and kind of create this future where there would be this second Reforging, and that the second Reforging would be somehow better. Because I guess in my opinion, it's almost like I feel like it would not be better. But this is something else I kind of learned after dealing with Reforged, that it might also be my personal life circumstances, that just the way things happened to be during the pandemic. But as I got a little more distant from Warcraft 3 and spent a little bit more time with the game itself, more and more, I don't think I want new art. I think that what I would enjoy with Warcraft 3 would just be more efficient customizations of the kinds that are already available on Reforged Engine. Basically, like ways to make new custom races in the game, new custom tech trees, whatever you want to call that, and have that be a more of a supported feature and less of sort of a giant hack. And so I guess in that way, I kind of disagree with this overall plan of maybe some people who know how to manipulate society. But it's interesting to me that when Blizzard is returning and making this are they returning? What does that mean, right? But when someone at the office of Activision Blizzard King is again making PTRs and touching the Warcraft 3 codebase, I tend to see it as naive to think that they're doing that out of the generosity of their heart. So probably it's more likely to me that they've come up with a way to profit again off of the Reforged engine, to sell a new product. And I think it's likely that that new product would be that sort of second reforging, some new art or graphics that tries to have everyone believe that now we've made it all better or improved on it versus what we had before. And I don't really see that as a good thing for any of what I enjoy doing. It makes me think that Warcraft 3 is going to get a lot worse because we don't have a way to play officially supported Frozen Throne from the year 2005 or whatever. So I can't do the thing Diablo players do in the face of Diablo Resurrected and just say, well, Resurrected is fun, but I'm going to go play my mod from 2005. So, like, as Blizzard would go and change these things, I'll be losing any remaining hope I might have been holding out of, like, finishing mods that I worked on years ago on Warcraft 3, because Blizzard is going to have to steamroll that to make it easy for themselves to make an engine that can do whatever it is they're trying to do. Unless if they go and make some fully new engine, which they probably won't do, because I guess that would take a lot of time. Although I'm not totally sure. I wouldn't rule it out. So it's in a weird place because I feel like Warcraft 3 is going to get worse. That's what I think. And I don't know. I don't really feel like I could stop that from happening. I don't really feel like I can change that outcome. But it just seems like something has got to be going on at Activision Blizzard King. Because they bothered, a lot of people I think have been trying to bother, what's his name, the leader of that. And, he was saying they've got different people. But they've got these different people who are supposedly managers of Warcraft 3 or Reforged or something. And, I mean, all these people, their job is to sell something. Their job, like, they come together as a company to sell something. If they're not interested in doing that, they would just be fans like we are on the outside. And so they have to cook up something to sell. And I think that probably the easiest and quickest thing for them to sell, I guess, would be the second remaster that those same trolls were talking about back in 2020 before Reforged came out, end of 2019. Just like those guys had wanted. And because they wanted it, maybe there's a market for it, right? Like, I don't know that I'm right to even speak out against that. I just think that it's not, I've come to believe that it's not totally what I want for Warcraft 3. I sort of wish that we had just basic things, like the ability to add custom folders in the object editor. I've talked about that one before. It's pretty simple. It's a simple example, but it's probably not easy for Blizzard to add to the code. And so I don't think they will, because there's no financial incentive to do that. For all their people, it's like there's not the stuff I want to have an editor I open up and make things in it is not a revenue stream. The more that I would advocate to them that they add that, the worse Warcraft 3 is going to become, because if they are sentimental and they do try to do what I advocate, they're going to be spending their time supporting stuff that if they had just discarded it all and only made specifically their own vision, they would have made more money and been more able to keep doing what they're doing. And yet it would mean I'd do less modding because I'd be less able to do modding, because I'm sure their vision is an online, some always online game that sells skins or something. But even then, I'm not sure that's their vision, because they made a whole skin system on Reforged and didn't use it. So I've never quite understood that decision making. But yeah, I don't know. So I just kind of wanted to make this video to talk about how I feel like Warcraft 3 is going to get worse. And I kind of almost feel like maybe what's going to happen is going to be that vision those trolls had way back in fall 2019, spring 2020. And I'm just saying, I wanted to say in advance, and I think it'd be funny to be on record before this happens, saying that I wish that didn't happen. I wish that it didn't go that way. I wish that it would be easier to mod, and I think that I won't have my wish. So I'm gonna have to get creative and come up with my own solutions to things so that I could do whatever I want to do, because it's probably not going to be what this company is selling. But I'm not the main target audience. I'm like an eccentric of Warcraft modding. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I think that's kind of maybe that's obvious to a lot of people. Maybe I'm just speaking the obvious here in this video, but this is kind of my take on the current patch cycle thing, whatever patch 133 is trying to become, because it seems likely to me that patch 133 is a little bad. It breaks things, so you'll be playing maps, you'll be opening the world editor, and it'll crash, and it'll be a hard time, and so the game becomes less robust. But that little bad is going to become a lot of bad when the new team gets some new vision that has no basis on the history of this game technology. And so, in order to turn the game technology into what they want, they're just going to have to steamroll over it and change it a bunch. And that wouldn't be wrong if they had a back door so I could play the old 2005 game that I like online with other people. Technically, I can still play it if I put the CD in my computer. That's true. That's been true. But only single player, because there's no server for it, and the game has a lot of fancy code in there that makes it you can't really make your own server. So I think there are people who do, but you really, at that point, you have to do a lot of hackery and sort of trust in the kind of people you don't want to trust to be running code on your computer to change the game so that it would, I don't know. My limited understanding of that is not great. And so it seems much easier to me to not use a third-party server with Warcraft 3, but I'm a little bit lazy in that way. I know there are a lot of people who would disagree with that. So I'm only talking for myself on that one. But anyway, with that in mind, I think it's, I guess I'm here doomsaying, but I feel like I wish it didn't have to be doomsaying. I hope that somebody comes up with a way to make it not doomsaying, because it's more like I'm protesting. I'm protesting a possible future that might happen, because I know they're not going to tell me what's happening until it already happens. And so I'm here saying, speaking my own part, and basically I'm just saying, I wish that Warcraft 3 could be moddable, and that if it changed, that it would become more moddable. And I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to change to be, we need this ladder, we need this melee features, and we need a third art setting to be prettier melee. And so, yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of my take on that. I honestly, what I probably should be doing is just modding the old 2005 game Warcraft 3, because in a really weird way, I think that that's kind of what I enjoy. When I've gone back and specifically gotten that version, instead of Reforged's emulation of it, which is really good, but if I go and get actually the old version, like the 2005 version, and I just mod that, it's almost cathartic for me, because maybe that's what I actually wanted to do. And so, like, if Blizzard wanted to pigeonhole into, how do you market to these people? I feel like maybe I'm someone who just wishes there was still a server for the 2005 game or something. I mean, it released in 2003, right? But I guess I'm thinking of, there were a few patches in the 2 years after that. So I'm referring to Warcraft 3 2005 as kind of like an era that's not its release date. But anyway, yeah, so I'm speaking my part into a camera, recording a video. And I think that's about it. But yeah, so I just kind of want to warn the world. I think things are going to get worse for Warcraft 3 before they get better. But what I wish that I could do is have a place online where I could just play the old 2002 Reign of Chaos game and its expansion, the 2003 Frozen Throne, as the full game that they were, and not as a versus mode button that plays their melee game. Because what I enjoy about them, I've said this in other videos, but what I enjoy about them can almost be thought of as the act of breaking them. Because it's fun to make, like, custom characters. Like, you take a footman, he looks cool, but you could take away his sword and give him a grunt axe. To me, that's fun. There are some people who don't enjoy that, who just want to play the melee game. I get that. And so for those people who want to play the melee game, it is better if they have some art remaster that's, like, I don't know, more and more perfect and revised or something. But yeah, so that's my take on it. And yeah, I wish I had a server where people could come together and play the old 2003 game. But I do also wish that I had the ability to mod a more open-ended version of the 2003 game. And Reforged tried to do some of that, but adding to the modding APIs, I don't know. It's a difficult beast. Reforged tried really hard at that, and I don't think a lot of people respect it. There are still people online who believe that Reforged only added art to the game and did nothing else, and it's a giant, lazy, evil thing. And that is in my opinion, untrue because I consider the work of the team making Reforged as kind of a part of that whole thing. And if you consider that, they added a whole bunch of custom APIs to the world editor and did all this other stuff that, I mean, I still believe that if I had an infinite amount of time in the Warcraft source code, maybe I'd do more than them. For sure I would. But it's not nothing what they did. So there you go. Warcraft Reforged, PTR, it's going to get worse. You heard it from me, folks.